Hello. Welcome to the Poppin Predictions, where we believe movies aren't over at the end, but are meant to be continued. You're here with Andy and Marqueze, where we ponder what happens at the end of a story once the credit begins to roll. On today's episode, we will be reviewing the movie Joker. Joker follows Arthur Fleck, a mentally troubled comedian in Gotham City who is disregarded and mistreated by society. He soon begins to embark on a downward spiral of revolution and bloody crime. This movie is rated R for strong violence, disturbing behavior, language, and brief sexual images. And as always, spoilers ahead. Hey Marquise, why don't you take us down this rabbit hole into madness and tell us what this movie's about?
Yeah, so as it's already mentioned, this movie follows a mentally troubled comedian in Gotham City as he kind of just goes on this downward spiral. And he's supposed to be the character of the Joker, from the Batman series. So this movie's interesting because, first of all, the character of Joker isn't really supposed to have an origin story, or at least not a legitimate one. And in almost every instance of Joker portrayed on screen, you just get him as Joker already. And anytime he tries to tell origin story, it's always convoluted. And
yeah, this is like one of the only times where the Joker even has a name. The only other time that the Joker has a name was when Jack Nicholson had, and it was like Jack Napier or something like that. So like this is like one of the only other times that the Joker has a name.
Yeah. I was watching The Dark Knight recently, and The Dark Knight, he actually gives separate origin stories for his own character, multiple times. And so anyways, this movie is already just very different starting off from that. Is that like we have a legitimate, like, this is how he came to power or came to be. And yeah, so it just starts off with this guy who is just obviously troubled. He's dealing with mental health issues. Physically, he just looks sick. He does not look well. He's an unsuccessful clown, unsuccessful comedian. He's just trying to take care of his mother, who is kind of withering away. Like it's just his life. It's just shown to be really crappy, and he's just not treated. On top of his life being crappy, he's then mistreated by society, like all around. He's mistreated 100%. By his coworkers. He's mistreated by his boss. He's mistreated by people on the subway. Like, it's everything about his life. It's just kind of pure unhappiness and misery for him. And he eventually, out of self-defense, comes to a point where he's being mistreated by people on a subway, and he ends up killing these people, not purposely, but just in self-defense. And he noticed once he does this, he's given like a new sense of confidence, a new sense of power.
Yeah.
He's a very not confident person throughout the very beginning of this movie. And so once he kills these guys who were just messing with him, he all of a sudden becomes more confident. There's a scene, it's a great scene where he's in the bathroom and he's doing this dance. It's right after
oh yeah.
And it's just like, it's very.
Yeah, it was like shortly after he murdered blood on. He still has blood on him. He still has all the blood on him. Yeah.
Yeah. So he like runs off into a bathroom and he just does this almost like ballet like dance, and it's very very beautiful, but like very intense. It's very emotionally intense, and you could tell that like his psyche, it's kind of like his mind is just out there off the wall, but that he's just kind of somehow like bathing in his own confidence in a way. And so from there on out, we then see this quote unquote Joker character, almost like an alter ego start to grow in him. And he starts to identify with it more and more and more. And yeah, just throughout the film, he is trying to figure out who his true father is. At one point, he thinks it's Thomas Wayne, Bruce Wayne's father, but then he's told that that's a lie. And not only is he told that that's a lie, that that's not his father, he then finds out that his mother was abusive towards him, and he couldn't remember these memories. And so that's really the snapping point, is when he finds out that his mother, the only good part about his life, the only good part, the only thing that he really still cares for about his life, when he finds out that his mother was actually lying to him and actually used to like be and abuse him and like watch him be abused. And
the betrayal.
Oh yeah, it was kind of like a horrible mother to him. And that's where you see him like just snap. Like at that point, like that's it, you know? And yeah, he just goes down this spiral of madness. Just one last quick thing on this description is that as he's going down the spiral of madness, the rest of of society sees this as like an act of, you know, anarchy, as an act of anti-society or like
anti-capitalist, really,
anti-capitalism, anti-society, like all that. Especially since he is not a fan of Thomas Wayne, and so people are seeing it as that. But for him, this has really nothing to do with society and societal pressures. This is just completely, I mean, in his own kind of world in his head of just, you know, his things with his missing his father, things with his mother, things with just kind of being, you know, treated wrong personally, but not literally seeing it as a societal issue until the last statement he gives in the film, which I have my own feelings about that, but we could get into that some other point. Yeah. That's the description of the film.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. It's interesting that you mentioned oh gosh, we're disagreeing right off the bat, I think, because you're like it's not society's fault, but like that line at the end that you don't want to talk about right now, like that, like it is one, like with the way that this movie goes, like it seems like it's 100% society's fault. Like, well, not one, sorry. 85% society's fault. I mean, like it ends with him like with joking about what you get when you get a mentally challenged man with a society that treats him like trash, exactly what you deserve. Like it is 100. Society has a huge role in this. So something that I really like about Joker, Joker is one of my favorite movies. I'm going to spoil a little bit about my rankings here, but like Joker is one of my favorite movies, especially because I rewatched it last night. We watched it a couple weeks ago, and then I rewatched it last night. And there's what I really like about Joker is that it plays. There's a lot of like Easter eggs in terms of like previous Joker roles. So like for example, the diner where Arthur and Sophie have dinner is on Jerome Avenue, which is if you're a fan of Gotham the TV show, Jerome is one of the name of the characters there. His name of the Joker is there. So like playing a tribute to that. I know at one point they mentioned like Ace in the Hole, which is one of the famous lines that Heath Ledger's Joker mentions in his movie. So like and there's a lot of examples. Like I think it's just really perfect. Like it plays a lot of homage to a lot of the previous roles, but it also looks into some real things that happened in America. So like I'm not sure if you knew this, but the movie actually you could argue that this movie takes place in the 1980s, specifically 1981.
Okay. Why?
Because the movie starts off with the fact that no one is picking up the trash. And in 1981, there was a 17-day strike by the sanitation service where they refused to pick up the trash, and it was in New York City, which is where Gotham is loosely based off of. So like they based doing some digging. I know. They based the fact that no one's picking up the trash in Gotham because they're on strike. Yeah. So like so you could make that argument that like this is taking place 1981 because that's when that strike took place. So what I really like is that they're taking both real events that happened as well as previous Jokers and making it into this movie, which I think plays into the lore of the Joker character. It's funny because like the Joker is probably one of the few roles out there that multiple actors have played. I think of like James Bond, and I'm sure there are other ones. Like that was just the only one I can think of off the top of my head. But like that have had
Batman.
multiple actors. Literally Batman, his counterpart, Joker's counterpart. But like, you know, one of the few characters out there that like have had multiple actors playing it. But I think why people love the Joker so much is that even though this movie was an attempt at an origin story, you can never know for sure. Is this really what happened to him? Is this really how he became the way that he is? Or is this just another episode in his head? Like, is this just another story in his head that, you know, that he makes up and tells people at a later date? So I really love that this movie, I think that this movie falls under the unfaithful narrator arc. And yeah, that's just my quick hot take on this.
The unreliable narrator, I definitely think as you start to realize that the closer you get towards the end of the movie, especially in my opinion, the last scene in the movie.
Oh, for sure.
Where he's sitting there talking with his therapist, who you see him talking to, or psychiatrist, where you see him talking to at the beginning of the film also, and then he just kind of like walks away, like running, and there's blood everywhere.
Yeah.
But he's in a mental health facility.
Right.
So the movie ends with him being in this mental health facility, but in the beginning of the movie, when he's talking to the therapist, it shows him already in a mental health facility. Right. And like he has a little flashback to it. And so there's
when did he ever get out? Like when did he ever get out of that mental facility?
Exactly. When did he ever get out of the mental facility? And not only did he ever get out, but they let him get out and then be a caretaker for his mother.
Exactly.
He was already like borderline about to go back in. Like, I don't know. That seems a little stretch. Yeah. So it's 100% that this could have all been possibly in his head. That's unsure of.
I want to talk about that scene really quick. I know that, you know, because this really doesn't have much to the ending of the movie that I know we'll talk about later, but like something else that this movie does, as well as paying tribute to other Joker roles, is paying tribute to other movies. And so like that scene when he has blood on his shoes and he's walking throughout the hallway is actually kind of a tribute to this movie called No Country for Good Men, because that movie kind of ends also like
Old Men?
Yeah. No Country for is it Old Men or Good Men?
No Country for Old Men.
Yeah, No Country for Old Men. Sorry,
I was like, wait a minute.
Sorry, my bad. But like, it pays tribute to that movie because like it ends. For spoilers for that movie, skip ahead 30 seconds if you don't want to hear this one. But like, it ends in like a sort of a heated conversation between a protagonist and a woman in the movie, and you don't know for sure if he kills the protagonist kills the person. But he looks at his shoes to check for blood. And so that's kind of like the pays a tribute to, because like he has blood on his shoes as he's walking away. So just another hot take trivia item for you all.
Also, side note, I thought that movie was not as great as everyone hyped it up to be. I'm very sorry.
You know, I'm not gonna lie to you. Haven't seen it, so I'll just take your word.
No, I mean it's hype. Like people love that movie. Called an all-time great film. I did it. I tried it, and like, I mean, we could discuss obviously on a much later podcast if we decide to do it. But for whatever reason, it just did not work for me.
Yeah, no. I mean that's okay. I feel like there's always that movie out there that like people. I mean, Joker could be that movie for some people that people like absolutely love. That like. Some people hate. Like, I think that there are some problematic aspects to Joker, like glorifying. I mean, if you want to say this is glorifying, you can make the argument that this is kind of glorifying mental illness. So like, there's some problematic areas there, but I think as like a story, it was really good. I'm not gonna lie to you. When I first saw this movie, like it confused, and it didn't confuse me. I was about to say, but you know, whenever you watch a movie that has some sort of psychological element in it, there's usually like some sort of cue that can let you know what is real and what isn't real. And I tried a couple of times throughout this movie to try to see when there were cues, when things were real and when things weren't real. And the fact of the matter is, for me at least, or I guess it's not a fact if it's an opinion, but my opinion, if you take the approach that none of this is real and like none of the events actually happened, the movie makes a lot more sense.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, because here's the thing. I think that we kind of went down. We kind of established. We didn't establish, but we talked about the idea that like he might not have ever left he might not have ever left Arkham State Hospital, which I think is just Arkham Asylum. But if he never left, and he either imagined all of this happening, or this is events that have already happened, and he is reliving it in his present day. Which kind of makes sense. I think when I was watching this movie, my biggest gripe with it was that the timeline didn't make sense because Arthur Fleck is significantly older.
Significantly.
Like he looks like he's in his 40s or 50s, and he approaches Bruce Wayne as like a 9-year-old, 9 or 10-year-old. Like this is shortly before his parents get killed. And like timeline wise, like that wouldn't make sense, because how would Bruce Wayne grow up and then fight the Joker when he's like in his 60s or 70s? Like that doesn't make sense. So to me, this has already happened. Either it has already happened, or he's making up this whole story in his head. Because like what could really happen is that the events have already transpired. He's in the insane asylum, and he is trying to get out of the insane asylum to kind of do his Spassi, which I guess we're kind of skipping ahead, but I'm going to go back. But yeah, I think when you take the approach that none of this has happened, or they are kind of flashbacks, it kind of makes a little bit more sense. Because if you also remember, when you were mentioning the therapist, the psychiatrist, whatever, at a certain point, she has to end her meetings with him because they ran out of funding. And then the very next scene was the stand-up comedy show, which is at Pogo's, which is actually a killer clown name, which is also kind of funny in itself. But the next scene is, they're at Pogo's comedy club, and he's telling his routine, and most of that can't be real, because he's up there trying to tell his routine, and he's stumbling through his jokes. He's not really nailing anything. And then it cuts away with everyone laughing. Somehow he's able to recover. And then you see it on the Murray Franklin show, how like much of a joke he made on TV. So like everything is kind of imagined in his head.
Yeah, I mean, 100. Like within that story, they even show us one thing for sure that was imagined, which is his relationship with this girl with Sophie, this girl that lives down the hall with them. It's at first, you're like, she's very nice to him. She's very nice to him in one little incident of just like being in the elevator. She's kind to him, and he takes that instance and in his head runs with it. And like, there's just scenes where he stalks her, and then she's like, "Was that you following me in the park today?" And she's like, "Yeah." And she's like, "I thought you should have said hi," or like something like that. Like
you should have come into robbed the place.
Yeah. There's things that are so unreal. Like, you talk to this girl one time, then you stalk her, and now she's not only not mad, but like she's okay and happy with it. Like there's just certain things that are obviously a little off and that are only in his head. And then the last scene with that you see with her is he's in her apartment, and supposedly in his head, this is after they've already like made out and all this other stuff, whatever.
Right, yeah.
But now he's chilling in her apartment, and she walks in, she's like, "Oh my gosh!" And she's like, "Who are you? Like, please don't hurt me. My daughter's here. You're the guy that lives down the hall, right?" And so that scene just told us, okay, their whole relationship was all in his head. Their whole relationship. And so the movie already lets us know that for sure he has figments of like imagination just kind of going off constantly in his head. Exactly. And so knowing that it's possible for him, very much I think it's very likely that this whole thing could have been an issue. This whole thing could have been a hallucination. This is the way they saw himself.
Did you happen to notice what he said to her when she found him?
No, I can't remember what he said.
He said, "I've had a bad day," which which is a reference to the comics. And I'm going to paraphrase here because I don't remember the actual quote, and I'll butcher it if I try to quote it. But I'm paraphrasing here, and it said in one of the Joker's comics, it mentions that all you need is one bad day to go from a sane person to lunacy, something like that. And so you notice after that scene, I think is really like, I think before that scene, like you see him kind of go into a spiral as Arthur Fleck. But I think after that scene is when you start seeing him go into a downward spiral for Joker. I think that's when he takes on the persona as the Joker, when he has I've had a bad day and fully realizes that, I don't even think he realizes that he went into Sophie's apartment and Sophie has I don't think he realizes that Sophie doesn't know him or doesn't have any relationship with him. But I think that was a really important scene to show that like he is kind of going down that spiral as the Joker.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was a trippy scene. Joaquin Phoenix did amazing in this movie, like acting. I'm actually just looking at the cover right now of the film, and it just has Joaquin Phoenix and then Joker, you know? So like, I mean, it's obvious that he is the highlight of this film. And his acting is amazing. He really portrays this mentally ill comedian well. And for, you know, those who haven't seen it, one thing that's really interesting is, you know, as a Joker, like he laughs a lot, right? Like the character laughs. And for them, they explained this laughing as an actual condition. I can't remember the name of the specific condition.
I actually know.
I was about to say, do you have it? Yeah, I was about to say.
Yeah, it's actually a real condition. I don't know how many people are impacted by it in real life, but I know that it's a real condition. It's called Pseudo-Belbar effect.
Okay, yeah.
Or pseudo-Belbar effect.
Do you want to explain what it is?
Yeah, so pseudo-Belbar, it's kind of like, if you think of, you know, so I don't know if you all have heard of like Tourette's, but Tourette's is like a condition where you have like a nervous tic and you can either shout like curse words or just shout some like really obscure phrases. And so with pseudo-Belbar, it can, if you're in like it kind of has like uncontrollable laughter, and it doesn't necessarily mean that like something funny has happened. Like you could be in like a really stressful situation and then just have like uncontrollable laugh that just like makes it even more awkward. And it's kind of hard to control because like, obviously you're consciously aware that like you shouldn't be laughing, but you can't stop laughing. And so that's kind of what he has. He also likely has schizophrenia. I think one way you can tell, I mean, of course, like ignoring the fact that he is likely imagining a good chunk of what we're seeing, you could also tell by his handwriting. His handwriting gets a lot messier as the movie goes on, even as he goes on down the page, which is a really common, it's a really common thing that you see in schizophrenia with the handwriting getting impacted and changing. And this movie really kind of plays into that, like plays into the whole mental illness, mental challenges. I think because of the fact that like this movie takes place in the 80s, again, we're right where people aren't taking mental illnesses and crises seriously. People are getting looked down on. And I think that is really reflected when Arthur writes in his journal that he has to write for his counseling, that people, I think he said the worst thing about mental illness, but the worst thing about mental illness is that people expect you to behave as if you don't have one. And it's all line. And it's like all in really messed up, distorted handwriting, which is again what I was saying, like a symptom of schizophrenia.
Wow, I didn't know that. But yeah, that was he definitely, that line I thought was really good. And you know, I might as well get into it now because we're going to eventually. So one of the last scenes in this film is a scene where Joker, he's full Joker now, right? He has the face paint on. He has his suit, like he has his costume, like he's gone almost into full Joker mode, or as much as you will see in this movie. And he goes on this show, the Murray Franklin show or whatever, where it's basically like a Jimmy Kimmel or
it's like it's based
late night.
It's like David Letterman because like that was like the really big show back then.
Yeah, stuff like that, right? And so he gets a chance to go on this show. Really, they originally wanted to just make fun of him as a failed comedian because he did really, really bad during his live stand-up performance. But he goes on the show, and instead of, like, he knows they're about to make fun of him, but instead, he turns it into this big monologue and gives this whole explanation for basically what he has done and then what he's about to do, because he admits to actually murdering boys on the subway, and so everyone's surprised, but the host Murray just kind of keeps talking to him about it.
Well, they didn't even believe him at first. They're just like, what, like, that's not funny, and he's like, I'm trying to he actually mentions something else that was really funny. He was like yes it is, and I'm tired of pretending it's not. I'm like, not that example, but I'm also tired of pretending that things aren't funny when they are.
That's great. But yeah, so he's, admitting to these murders, blah, blah, blah. And then he gives this whole monologue explanation of why he's been doing everything he's done. And the goal, because we've seen him plan what he's planning on with this whole, what he's doing.
Yeah, he was trying to kill himself.
He was going to kill himself. He was going to, say all these things. And then he was going to, I think was it the joke, I hope my death makes more sense than my life? Was that going to be his final joke? Or was it a different joke?
I think that might have made a part of it. I don't know if he was going to make that as the joke, but I think that was a driving factor that he kept referring to. It was definitely a knock-knock joke, because he was like, knock, knock, who's there? And then boom.
That's right. And so he was supposed to kill himself at the end of that. But instead, he's like, as he's giving this monologue, explaining that this is what happens when you mix mentally ill people with this type of society, blah, 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 blah. And then he gets, like, you see his anger to rise up, and instead of shooting himself, he kills Murray, just like blasts his head off. Boom. And everyone starts freaking out, and then he does this like little dance, he walks up to the camera, and then it's absolute, chaos in the streets, there's riots, and we could get to the end of that. But anyways, this little monologue piece, right? Mm-hmm. I thought this film was great and amazing almost until I got to this piece.
Right.
I thought that even though the movie was like definitely like for sure letting us know a ton that this was like a mental health thing and, that he's being mistreated, they nevertheless at any point didn't like just directly tell us too much. They just showed what was happening. And so then all of a sudden you get to this scene in the film and I get this explanation, this 3-minute, whatever long explanation of everything that's been going on, everything that's happening. And it felt like it took the artistic nature away from the film. I felt like the film was supposed to show me what's going on. It's supposed to show me how he's been being abused, which they did very well throughout the entire movie. Mm-hmm. The kid smacking him with his thing, the little spinning sign. Yeah. And then, his boss mistreating him and his mom. And like, it's just kind of showing all this mistreatment. And it's showing how this mistreatment is corrupting him. So we can very obviously see what's going on. But then he has to obviously he's explaining it to Murray, but, he's really explaining it to us, the audience, explaining what's going on. And so I kind of got, I'm upset, but to me, it just, I don't know. It was like, wow, you had a lot of really good, I don't know, I feel like artistic and creative flow. And then I felt like it broke it in order to get this like very direct point across. Like, I want to make sure you leave this movie recognizing this. And for me, it kind of broke the artistic level of the movie just for, in order to drive home a point incredibly strongly. And so for me, that's kind of where it ruined it.
What would you have preferred?
I don't know. I would have preferred like an actual legitimate, I don't know, Joker character, because he was just becoming more and more maniacal as the story was going on. And so he let his emotions get the best of him at times towards the end, but like never in a way like that, I felt like, at least not towards
I mean, he straight up murdered Randall in the most violent fashion.
Yes, but like Randall's didn't even seem like, it seemed Joker random, like playfully, like he was having fun with it. You know, he like actually, that's one of my favorites.
Moment where he snapped too, because Randall was the only, like, because it was Randall and Gary came to his house after his mom died, and they found out that Arthur had talked to the detectives, and so the only reason why they were, or at least why Randall was there, I don't want to speak for Gary, but the only reason why Randall was there was because he wanted to find out what Arthur told them to try to make up for himself. So, like, there was like a reason why he did it. Like, it seemed random.
Yeah.
And it was in a certain degree, like how he did it, but like it was kind of intentional in terms of how he did it.
Yeah, like it was intentional, but I guess like it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't just like all of his emotions kind of like getting the best of him in the moment and then like killing Murray the way it did, and like him just kind of giving this, like, I don't know, I feel like the monologue just did not feel Jokerish. Like, that's not part of a Joker character. Like, for me, the Joker character, you know, is more clouded in mystery. He's more clouded in, you know, you think I'm doing something over here, but really I'm doing something over here. Like, that's that type of character he is. And then for him to go and then just have this big, you know, straightforward monologue explanation of what he doesn't like about society, like, you would never see the Joker do something like that. Like, he always keeps everything very playful. Even as a frustration, everything's very playful. And so for me, it was kind of just out of character. It seemed like that was more so of like a mental health breakdown.
It was probably the most serious. Well, I don't know. I have a completely different take on this. I could see where you're coming from. To me, the Joker character has always been that playful villain, but also like is one of those villains that we've talked about in previous episodes that, like, in their frame of mind, they are the good guy. They are the good person. They are, you know, they point out society's flaws. And that his entire monologue at the end was pointing at the fact of all the built up examples that we've seen throughout the movie about how society mistreats people with mental health issues. And you got to see that, like how you know, he mentioned how the 3 people that got murdered on the train got more attention than Arthur would after he got jumped and beaten up for you know, for being dressed up as a clown, being like kind of like the lower socioeconomic person. And so I think that scene kind of, in my opinion, was like pinnacle Joker. Was like he like had a plan, and he has his plan going into things, and he like talks about his concerns. I mean, Heath Ledger's Joker does that a couple of times in The Dark Knight. A couple of other Jokers I know do that sort of thing too, where they kind of have like
always incredibly playfully.
Yeah.
Like, especially Heath Ledger's. Like, it was almost never a serious moment with him. Very
rare. And I think that even though it kind of came across serious, because of course he ends up murdering Murray Franklin, like right on TV, like he's trying to crack jokes. He's trying, even like throughout, I mean, his suicide was supposed to be a joke. Not a funny joke by any means, but like it was meant for him to be a joke. And so I think that scene was pinnacle Joker. I think that was like what led to the next scene of him getting taken away, and like you see chaos in the streets, anarchy. Like that was maybe his plan afterwards, was like to cause anarchy in the streets and then get taken away and be railed as a hero, which I have my opinion on, which I'll talk about later on. But like I think that like there's 2 sides of this. Either like he became the leader of a movement, I think completely unintentionally. I don't think he has the bandwidth or even the power to become a leader of a movement, but I think he became one unintentionally. but I think that I don't think he was trying to become the leader of the movement, but I think that he got his audience, he got his support system after that Murray Franklin scene.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, yeah, he definitely didn't seem to have any tension because, in fact, Murray asked him before he gets on stage.
No, yeah, he's like, I'm
hey,
not political. I'm not trying. I'm just here to make people laugh.
Yeah, you know, like he's like, I'm not with the rest of these movements or anything like that. And to me, that's very authentic. Like, at no point in this entire movie did Arthur show to like be trying to dismantle any system or that he was against, you know, the rich in general or the poor or whatever. Like, he was just dealing with things on like a very small scale of in terms of what is going on in his particular life, whether he was going to have a job or not, whether this girl liked him or not, whether he could take care of his mom or not, whether he could find his father or not. Like, everything is very small scale on his life. At no point in this entire movie does he ever see to even have his mindset on addressing society as the problem. And then just all of a sudden, in that one quick switch, now his focus is society, and now his focus is the bigger picture and dismantling it. Like, it's just like, what?
Okay. But I think that now I get you. Now I get you. Where it seemed like the movie was more like the majority of the movie was focused on his downward spiral, and then at the very end, it's like out of nowhere he becomes this sort of leader. Okay, I get you now.
And I very much agree with what you said in the beginning when you were like, I mean, this whole movie is about how society is mistreating him and all that stuff like that. And I 100% agree. It's just they were showing it, and then all of a sudden he became this almost different version of himself that was like embodying trying to destroy it. When in fact the whole movie he's a victim. He's a victim of society. He's a victim of of how mental health is treated and all this stuff. But then all of a sudden in those last 5 to 10 minutes, he becomes almost like a hero championing. Oh my God, I cannot.
You got this. I believe in you.
This cause, you know, which is just like if they wanted to like grow into that throughout the film, they could have started that earlier, but they switched to it in the last 10 minutes, which just made no sense to me.
Well, I mean, I think something to remember, and I'm not saying that you forgot this, but like I think something to kind of remember is that this is meant to be. I mean, again, this is also a matter of opinion. This is meant to be his origin story. And so he's not going to, especially kind of being the lowest of the low, like he's not going to have his supporters. To me, it makes sense that it takes time for him to get the supporters that he needs. And it could, like I mentioned earlier, it is kind of true to the character that all it takes is one bad day for a sane person to descend into lunacy. So for the people watching the show that became his supporters, they saw that as the triggering moment to join his cause and their descent into lunacy. So I think that it makes sense that it took up until the entire movie to kind of get his supporters, because this was never meant to be about him like taking over Gotham. Like it was never meant for him to become the leader of Gotham or descend Gotham into chaos. It was his story of how he became, or one of the stories of how he became the way that he was. And so if it had been the case that he had his supporters throughout the movie, I would have been okay. This is kind of straying away from the point of the movie. So to me, having it within the last 10-15 minutes of the movie kind of gears towards like a sequel that could potentially happen, which I know that Joaquin Phoenix, and I don't remember the director's name, but the director also is
Todd Phillips.
Yes. They also have been.
Hangover.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. But they've also been in the talks of doing a sequel. I've been trying to find out if there's been any updates, but I think COVID has been a huge barrier in place. But they have publicly said that they wanted to do a sequel to Joker. So I see what you're saying, but yeah, I think in the mindset of understanding like this is supposed to be an origin story, that like it makes sense to me that it took a while.
And I'm fine with that. I'm just like, I'm fine. Like, just show us the transition. We never even saw the transition. It's just all of a sudden he was like this, and then all of a sudden now he's doing things on a societal scale. Like, I would have been fine if the one bad day thing goes from someone who's already low to lunacy. I am fine with that. But then show him like all of a sudden, like he just, like at the beginning, he only murders people, out of self-defense or, whatever. But like, if you want to
he didn't kill his mom in self-defense.
Sorry. I mean, at first, let's say at first it was the boys,
okay.
and then he moves to like his mom and Randall, and he just starts getting like really intense. But like, that descended to lunacy, he starts going on like bigger murder sprees, or you see him stop caring about things. Like, that would be actually really good if they would have showed him like almost completely, like almost not even caring, but just playfully like people's lives. I think the scene where they did this best actually was the scene where Randall and Gary go over to his apartment to kind of figure out what's going on, where he kills Randall and he's like giggling and like playfully like joking around with Gary, like, I'm gonna kill you too. Nah, you could go, like,
that was so messed up too, because of course Gary has dwarfism, so like he I don't think Arthur like was like, let me murder Randall when he like locked the top lock, but like it was just messed up that he locked the top lock and then he had to go and help Gary out. That was so
like that to me, like that was a perfect descent into like madness of like this man just murdered somebody and he doesn't even care, he's playing jokes, like that was it. Whereas, I don't know, I fully just disagree within the last like 15 minutes of the film of how they transitioned into more of him developing into the Joker. I thought they did really good of showing what caused him to get there, but then showing the actual transition, I thought they did not do too well. But
let me ask you this. If you hypothetically were to rewatch this movie with the mindset that none of this is real and that none of this actually happened, would that change your mind?
No. Off top, I'm going to say no, simply because, I mean, you're still showing me a storyline, and so the storyline still needs to make more sense, even if it is in his head. But
well, because if it takes place in his head, then like it makes sense. It makes sense that the rapid ascension or like the random supporters are just out of nowhere.
You got a point.
It just makes sense that these people just come out of nowhere and are his biggest cheerleaders, his biggest supporters. And
the
also
whole movement based off him. And
I mean, like it also doesn't show him getting caught at the end. It just like after that scene when he's dancing around in the car, like the next scene is him in Arkham State Hospital. So like. That's another thing to me that, like, it just makes sense. Because do you really think that if he had all those supporters, that they would just let the police arrest him? Like, if he's surrounded by people that are hailing him as a king and, like, as, like,
well, they crash the police car and, like, get him out.
They take him out. Exactly. So he's surrounded by his people.
Yeah.
So, and then the next scene is him in the hospital. So if this thing actually happened, do you... Like
they would have never let him take him to the hospital.
There's no way they would let him take him away. There's no way they would let him take him away.
So you actually might have a good point in that if it's all in his head, that allows for the plot holes because his mind in itself is unstable and does not have a correct linear story. And so it makes sense why there's be all these little holes of like, wait, this? Like, how did that happen? Like, Bruce Wayne is a child? Like, it's just like it makes sense why if this is really all going on in his head, why everything is just so incredibly off.
Yeah. And I know that, like, I know that you know, they do like a quick flashback early on in the movie with Arthur banging his face against
oh my God, that's such a wild
against the door in the asylum. And then they do another scene where after he gets fired, he smashes his face against the telephone booth, like glass wall, kind of making it seem like those things are kind of connected, that he's used to banging his head against glass objects. I think that, like, why I brought that thing up originally is that, like, you don't see his face, you don't see anything, you see the back of him, but his hair, and I know this is like a really small detail, but like his hair hasn't changed.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, if you like, to me, like if you're in an asylum for a long time, like I imagine that like your hair is going to change, like something about you is going to change. And when they flash to the end of the movie, when he's in the asylum, he has like the same hairstyle, like nothing really seems to have changed about him.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I 100% think that this movie either was completely imagined, made up, or bits and pieces have happened and it's more of him trying to remember it and we're seeing it from his perspective and not what's actually happening.
I mean, that would make the story more easily digestible or more easily understandable in terms of certain holes it has. But then I feel like that's almost just lazy writing at that point. But
is it though? Like that's the Joker's character. Like the Joker is that mysterious person, that like mysterious, playful, like chaotic or like organized chaos, and like the Joker has a completely different worldview than anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's lazy writing. I think it's playing into the Joker character.
Yeah, I mean, you could have still made. It doesn't give you the excuse to write plot holes and to have plot holes in your story. I'm sorry. Like, it does not give you that excuse.
Okay.
You can still show the madness and the instability. Like they did that when they showed when the whole thing with Sophie. Like, they were able to still keep the coherent story while showing that he himself is unreliable in terms of knowing what's going on. So there's ways around it, but I felt like there's actual plot holes in the script itself, and they're only covered by the fact of like, if the whole thing is just in his head and he's already messed up, then that's acceptable. Like, I don't know. If that was the case, I think that's lazy. But if that was the case.
Okay. So Marqueze, my friend, my buddy, my pal. We've built. I feel like we built up a lot here, and I think that I feel like we're on different sort of paths, which is totally okay. I'm excited whenever we have different paths. Joker 2 gets announced at some point. Okay. How do you think the second Joker? What do you think happens, or if there's not a second Joker? What do you think happens immediately after him murdering the psychiatrist?
So to me, okay. I'm gonna ask you,
you want to ask me?
No, I was just saying, ask you to rephrase the question in terms of, for me, that's not like that's the ending, but that's not the ending.
When is the ending for you?
For me, the ending is when he's standing on top of the police car doing that little dance again, and is surrounded by a bunch of people in chaos.
Okay, that's fair. That also seems like it might be an easier jumping off point. So I'll also give I'll also give like, I know that we talked about the ending. I'll give like a super quick summary because we talked a lot about this in detail. Arthur Fleck appears on the Murray Franklin show. With the intentions of dying by suicide. Instead, he's kind of made a mockery and kills Murray Franklin live on air. And before the TV cuts out, he goes to the TV screen and mentions Murray's famous line, "That's just life." And then after that happens, all chaos is ensued. He's arrested on site. You see him get jumped as the camera gets shut off. And so he's getting driven away in a squad car. The squad car gets overrun by rioters who then help him escape. And you see him take the blood from his face and make a large smile, kind of similar to the scars you see on Heath Ledger's face when he played the Joker. So you see that kind of huge smile with the blood. And then you see him kind of do like this lunacy dance that he kind of does throughout the movie.
At least 3 times. I can at least think of 3 times when he does it.
Well, he practices the dance is loosely based off of like Murray Franklin's dance, because Murray Franklin does that.
Oh yeah, he does it that one time.
He does that dance.
Yeah.
So like, and he practices Arthur is practicing that dance for when he's on the show. So you see him do that dance on the top of a squad car, and then the next scene is him in having a counseling session with the psychiatrist. He's laughing because after this point, both Thomas Wayne and I don't remember the name of Batman's mom, but Batman's parents died. And he's laughing because he's thinking about how his parents are dead, and now both Joker and Bruce Wayne are orphans because both their parents are no longer alive. And he's laughing, and the psychiatrist is like, "Why are you laughing?" Because it's an inside joke. You wouldn't get it. Next scene, you see the Joker walking down a hallway, blood on his feet, and That's Life starts playing. He gets chased by some nurses, and it kind of ends there. So you want to predict based off of the scene of him dancing on the squad car. So what happens after him dancing?
So he's dancing on a squad car. For me, as everyone's loving around him, they're all cheering him up, blah 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 blah. I think that he ends up after that. I think there's going to be more and more police that are going to try to stop the movement, like stop this riot that's going on, but more particularly that are going to try to get him because he's the one that initiated it, obviously, with killing Murray on camera. And so as the police are trying to reach him to get to him, I see just certain fanatics, same as the people who drove the truck and hit the police car in order to get him out. Maybe those people and a few others, really, really dedicated, start protecting him from the police, picking up guns, shooting back at the police, whatever. And Arthur ends up finding the dedicated, almost disciples as his loyal crew or whatever. And then from that on, from that point on, I could see him taking a bigger picture. Almost if they would have started the transition right here instead of 15 minutes earlier, I would have liked it so much more, because this is a point to where one of the things he does incidentally causes a societal reaction. So now it makes sense that he's all of a sudden, okay, now thinking on societal terms. And now he's trying to start going against, well, you've treated us poor this way for so long. You've treated us mentally ill this way for so long. And so then I see him, this is where he starts his more devious planning of, maybe planning bombs in, police stations, or maybe he starts, going to, rich banquets and throwing tear gas in places. This is where his madness starts almost being directed at certain things. Because before, when society was picking on him, his madness and anger was just directed at whatever was going on around him, near him.
Right, yeah.
Now he has an actual purpose, because now he's been the victim, now he's championing the defense, and now he's actually going against the societal things that are keeping down the poor and the mentally ill.
Marquise, I'm going to call you out on your BS here. Marquise is dying off the camera.
Let's go.
All right, because here's why I'm going to pick up bone with you. Whenever we have these debates, whenever we have a disagreement on a theory, I'm always the person that's these are the lessons he's learned throughout the movie, and this is why he's changing. And you're like, no, I don't think he's learned a dang lesson. I don't think anything is going to happen. And here it is for Joker. Out of nowhere, Arthur Fleck has somehow learned that he is now a martyr, and that he is the icon for civil unrest in Gotham, and that now that he murdered Murray Franklin on TV, is kind of the anti-capitalist movement, that he is going to help Gotham go into the madness. And I am on the other side and completely disagreeing with you that I don't think that that's what happens at all, because I still go back to that part during the interview when he mentions that he is not a part of that movement. He is not a part of what's going on. He doesn't care about the riots are happening because of labor rights, and he doesn't care about labor rights. He doesn't that. They are not aligning. Their goals aren't the same. I think that his supporters there view him as such because of the fact that he murdered 3 of the Wall Street guys, 3 of the guys, but he to him he was just defending himself. It could have been 3 mobsters that were picking on the person that was trying to beat him up. Like, it doesn't make a difference to him.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that he becomes the leader of this movement. I think that he continues with letting people think that he supports them, I think that he, like, because in his mind, he just wants to make people happy. He wants to make people laugh. And so he is getting his audience. Like, after he is getting his audience now. He wants to be a famous comedian. And he's noticed that if he does these wildly outrageous things, such as murdering the people that worked at Wayne's company, the people, Murray Franklin, who was making fun of him and putting down the lower class, that he's going to keep his audience. I don't think he gives a crap about labor rights or anything. He doesn't understand any of that. So I think that, yes, maybe they do some sort of anarchy sort of thing, but I think the rationale is completely different.
Okay, I see where you're going from. The reason I feel like I justify mine is that I feel like it's, like I said, you were saying how the transition like wasn't there for you. For me, the transition, like, he notices that he's an icon when he really finally sees that there's a reaction directly to something that he did, like directly. He killed Murray. Right afterwards, there are riots in the city with people wearing clown masks. Like, I think he recognizes he's an icon once a bunch of people, or some people take a truck, rob a police car, and break him out of a police car. Like, I think all those instances right there were great moments to transition for him to become the Joker on I'm a champion of the lowly, and so I'm going to start, screwing over all those in power. Yeah.
I think in his mind, they are the abused people because of maybe mental illness, but his supporters are definitely the laborers class.
Yeah.
Because you see in newspapers, it's like in newspaper headlines, it says like kill the rich, like stuff like very like anti-rich folks. And so all of his supporters are of that mindset. And so that's why I think that he like adopts them as his audience and as his supporters, because he wants to make the world laugh. He wants to make the world happy. And so if he does that through anarchy, he's accomplishing his mission. And if that means that he can remain in power as their icon, then I think he'll continue it in that mindset, but not in the mindset of let me try to give these people what they want, unless they are also struggling with mental health issues like I have.
Okay. Sorry, we're going to say something?
Yeah. So my theory takes place after all of that, when he's in the asylum. I think I've talked about this a lot in terms of like I think when I first watched it, I took the mindset of like, okay, some of this is true, some of this isn't true. After rewatching it multiple times, I'm taking the mindset that like none of this is true, or it's flashbacks. I think the second Joker is going to be taking some of the lessons that he's learned in terms of the fact that he can easily rise to power if he takes this whole society hates the lower class, society hates mental illness people, and he uses it to rise to power. While also, this is the rise in Batman. So I think that this is kind of, I mean, this is a silly prediction, but I think that in another movie, it takes place in present day, because if you notice in the asylum, if you notice in the movie, it's very dark. Yeah. But that last 5 minutes when he's in the asylum, it's very bright, like it's lit up. And so I think that kind of is to signify a little bit that this is now present day. And so he was remembering everything, or he was making everything up at his current age. But if they are flashbacks, or if some of these things are flashbacks, he is remembering everyone at their current age because he can't just make up people as what they look like now. So he's remembering them as what they looked like back then, but he's remembering himself at his current age. And so Bruce Wayne, even though he's 9 years old in the movie, maybe he's in his 30s present day, because now we're talking about 2020 right now. So he's like in the present day moment. And I think that this is when you see that clash between the classic clash between Batman and Joker, where where Joker is able to rationalize that like they aren't that different, and you kind of see the story arc go from there.
Okay, yeah, no, that I can see that working. For me, I almost would find it hard to continue off of like a Joker 2. I almost would find a hard time, to be honest, continuing off the way it went. Because even though I have my own prediction for how the script could continue, I don't think it would actually go like that. I think if they did a Joker 2, I don't know. The first one is so based on his come up. Like, it's hard for me to really actually picture one where he's a leader. Because Heath Ledger's Joker seemed like a leader. Jared Leto's Joker, like a leader, you know. Same with Robert De Niro didn't play Joker.
Jack Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson. Same with Jack Nicholson's Joker. Whereas Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, to me, like, he doesn't seem like a leader at all.
Well, that's because this is the origins. So he's
I don't
not
even see him
be...
becoming, like, does he seem like the type of person that can even become a leader naturally?
Now you're backtracking, Marquise, because first you're like, he becomes this leader of this movement, and now you're like...
Let me have my plot holes! If Todd Phillips could do it, I can do it, okay? Like, he doesn't own plot holes.
Oh God! The title of this is Joker Review. Also, the episode where Amy and Marquise break up.
Like, I
think he does become the leader, but I also can understand where you're coming from. Where like he never wanted to be this leader. He can't be this leader. So
he literally does not look like he has a personality for leadership.
Yeah, I think that there's been so many. Like, the funny thing is, like, how funny would it be if like the ending of this movie was actually the beginning for the Dark Knight movie?
The Dark
Like,
Knight,
this
that
is
would
just
be so sick.
Like, that's actually what I think realistically happens, is that you see how everything unfolded, and then Batman doesn't actually realize that Joker was the cause of everything because he was a little kid at the time, so he's not going to like fully know everything or like understand who Arthur Fleck is. So I think that the Dark Knight would hypothetically take place after this movie, because that's when you see maybe that's when he gets released from the asylum because he murdered the psychiatrist. He escapes. He's able to escape, and he has this group of supporters that he's able to use to rain terror on Gotham City.
Wow. So that'd be wild if it was the beginning of the Dark Knight. So in a Joker 2, do you think that it would be a large Batman focus?
No. I still think that it follows Joker, because I think that what I really love about this movie is that it is purely the Joker's perspective on things. Like, you as the audience kind of realize at a certain point that like certain memories that he's having wasn't real, but I think he also realizes it at the same time as well. So like example of this is like Sophie not being there. I think he realizes that Sophie wasn't real or wasn't with him most of the time at a certain point in the movie. I think that we all realize that Thomas Wayne isn't his dad at the same exact time when he's reviewing the documents. And so like this movie is 100% on the Joker's perspective, which I think is a really fresh and really nice take on the whole franchise.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely did not expect this. Like, I expected a movie obviously like based more on the villain of the Joker, which I thought was going to be cool, but I did not expect it to really be so Joker based. Like, I thought it was going to be Joker, especially like in connection with a villain. Like, at least like with Batman Begins, right? So
Right.
it's about Batman, but there's also a large focus on like who the villain is and like how he's, you know, like really going to be antagonist to society. Like I thought, put it this way, I thought Batman was going to be the antagonist of the story. So it was very interesting to me originally when I was like, oh no, like just society in general is the antagonist.
Exactly.
You know, they really made this the Joker movie, not, you know, we're following the villain instead of the hero. Like,
yeah,
it really was.
where we get the understanding that Joker is not as bad, or we can not as bad as we think, or we can understand if we do think he's really bad, we can kind of get that understanding of how he got there in the first place in this movie. So, with that being said,
wait. I'll let you do you. What are you about to do? What are you about to say?
I'm about to transition to our rating scale. So
I figured you were. So one quick thing before we get to our rating scales, though.
Okay.
Because I'm curious what you think about this, because this was a big criticism of the movie when it first came out, which was this movie and movies like it, Taxi Driver, I would say First Reformed, my favorite movie in this genre of films that deal with a man a very lonely and secluded man who eventually gets, you know, wild or insane ideas in his head and then starts to act violently upon them in society. It's almost become like a real genre of film. And you could even say that this is a nod to Taxi. Well, I mean, almost directly, I'm pretty sure, actually. It's a nod to Taxi Driver because their main character in Taxi Driver is actually Robert De Niro. And so then having Robert De Niro play Murray, the guy who's then trying to talk this guy down, is actually pretty, you know, ironic. And so this movie, kind of like those, is criticized for you're voting for the bad guy, but not only like are you voting for him, this movie is like really kind of justifying in a way, or at least people like to put it that way. It's justifying his actions against, you know, the richer society or killing people. It's you know, when you treat mentally ill people in a certain way, you know, like this is what happens. And a lot of people were kind of criticizing this movie and saying like it's trying to make you sympathize with a serial killer or a murderer, or saying that like, well, you know, it's not their fault, they're dealing with this and they had this happen to them. Like, that was a side of criticism that kind of came with this movie, and I'm just kind of curious what you think about that criticism, that this movie defends mentally ill killers or whatever.
Hot take. I love it. That's the name of this episode, Hot Takes.
Hot Takes with Joker.
Hot Takes with Joker. I think that is 100% fair. I think at the end of this is such a cop-out answer. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, this is a movie. Like this is just a movie. Like, I think that if you're going to poke fun, if you're going to criticize a movie for getting you to sympathize with serial killers with mental illness, a serial killer that has mental illness, there are also plenty of other movies out there that poke fun at the audience being entertained by really sadistic behavior. And so, like, yeah, like this movie does get you to do that, but at the end of the day, it still makes you think about at least for me, it still makes you think about the mental health crisis that we face in America, and how we still haven't addressed a lot of it, most of it. And there's a lot of things that America needs to address. But at the end of the day, like, if I'm watching a movie, I am going to try to get entertained. I'm not going to, I'm not saying that like this event would actually happen where a lunatic clown would take over society and come up with that I would instantly be like, yes, I'm a clown supporter because of all this. Like, no, I think that there's a line between being with the criticism that's made and also recognizing like this is just a movie. Like, it's not meant for you to actually actively sympathize with murderers.
Mm-hmm.
At least in my opinion, like you're not meant to actively sympathize with murderers.
Yeah, I mean, I would fully agree. And so to me, that's what a lot of people were trying to paint it as that's the goal of this movie, is almost to get you to sympathize with, murderers, crazy people, whatever. Whereas, no, like, the goal isn't to sympathize, but the goal is to say, like, there's a deeper cause to this trouble stuff that's going on. What Arthur does is not okay. Him murdering Randall, even though Randall set him up with a gun and all this, is not okay. Him murdering Murray, even though they were going to make fun of him, is not okay. Like, 100%. Him doing any of these, him murdering the boys on the train, you could maybe argue that was self-defense more so, but nevertheless, like, the point isn't to say
the first two, at least. The third one was definitely
the third
not.
one, he just goes after him.
Yeah.
You could argue, I would say more so that this movie's really just highlighting, like, these people, these murderers, or these things don't come out of nowhere for the most part. Like, they're all products of their society. And so if we're producing a society that produces people that does this, we need to look at it at an even deeper cause. So what deeper before even the murderer is making them do these things? And to me, this is what this film was trying to address. It's like there's a deeper societal cause that causes people to be like them. So.
Exactly. Like when I think of, I mean, unfortunately, recent events where we see a mass murder, or even just not even most recent events, just mass murder at large, like I never have sympathized with any of them, even if they do have a compelling backstory as to why they went down this route. Like, I am never going to be like, yeah, like they are totally justified in killing all these innocent people that were just trying to live their best lives. Like, will I get a better understanding? Yes. Will I acknowledge that there are probably bigger factors into play? Yes. But I will never agree with justifying the murder of innocent people, even if the person that does it has a valid quote unquote reason.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's most people's. All right, yeah, I would assume that's most people's view.
Just some people's view. Cool. All right. Rating scale. Boom. Pew pew. Pew 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 pew. Jimmy, put in the sound effects. Thank you. Really good job. Rating scale. So if you're new to our podcast, we look at movies and we assign them a size of popcorn. So small is your like 1 to 3, medium is like your 4 to 6, large is like your 7 to 9, and big bucket is like 10 out of 10. Like, drop what you're doing, watch this movie right now. And so because I asked you to do the prediction first, I will do my best to give a rating to Joker.
I feel like I know what this is going to be.
My man, I really want to give this a big bucket. Like, I want to give this a big bucket. Shoot. I'm going to give it a large.
Really? I thought this was definitely going to be a big bucket.
It's definitely one of my top 10 favorite movies of all time. I can confidently say like it's in my top 10. I think when I reflect back on the stuff that we talked about today, when I first watched this, I try to give ratings based off of like my initial watching of the movie. And so when I initially watched the movie, like I did have a lot of issues with the plot holes that you talked about and some of the things that I talked about during the movie, like I had some issues with. And so, even though when I rewatch it, I like it more, I think when I reflect back to like the first time I watched it, because I imagine a lot of people, like there are those movie buffs out there that like love to rewatch movies, but there's also a bunch of people out there that like they watch the movie once and they're fine. So I think if I take the mindset of those that have watched this movie once, like it's definitely a large, because there are those plot holes that like aren't super huge, but are there. But if I were to take the mindset of somebody that like loves to rewatch movies, like this is a big bucket for me, just because of the fact that like there's so many small details throughout this entire movie that like impacts the plot, that plays close to the plot, that plays tribute to previous Joker roles, that plays tributes, that acknowledges historical events that have happened, that kind of creates the scenario in the scene that we're seeing here. So like I am right at like a 9.5. Like this is like right before a big bucket. This is a large, like the largest of large, extra butter, as we referred back in a previous episode. Like this is extra butter on a large bucket for me.
Okay.
What about you, Marquise?
For me, this is a solid large. This is a solid large bucket for me. I think this is a great film. I like these theme of films. Like I said, other films in this category are Taxi Driver and then also First Reformed. First Reformed, my favorite of this genre of film. Highly recommend. It's an A24 film, and one day we will do it on this podcast. But just saying real quick. But yeah, I think I like this genre of film. I like the idea of loneliness. Because loneliness plays a big factor. Like we have to admit, it plays a huge factor in this. The only one that's even really kind to him at all is really his mom. And so, and then once that goes, is when we find where he snaps. And so I felt like if he had, real community with his coworkers, boss, with, maybe the people that live in this building, whatever, if he had a real type of community and real people to talk about these problems with, then, things might not have it spiraled toward the point where they get, which is what a lot of us, we typically have somebody, or a group of people that, we kind of like talk our stresses through with, and eventually move on. But when you don't have anybody to talk, these things through with, I could very easily see how all these theories could build up in your head and all this justification for things that are not okay. And then all of a sudden, bam, you're where Arthur Fleck ended up. And so I really love this kind of genre of film in general. So yeah, I mean, I thought this was a really good, cool take. I love that, this film was written in a way to where even though Joker's not supposed to have a origin story, they were able to give him an origin story, but make it so unreliable that it could not also be his origin story.
Right.
So,
exactly.
Yeah. So overall, I think this is a solid large bucket for me.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, our amazing listeners out there, what did you think about Joker? Do you think that he becomes like the icon of a new movement, or do you think that he kind of strays down a different path? Be sure to subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to it. Please actually follow us on social media, on Instagram at poppinpredict.pod and on Twitter at poppinpredict to let us know your thoughts. If you have any movie recommendations for us, please let us know. We're really excited to try to do some recommended movies. Until then, keep popping, everyone.
All right, peace.